Hi everyone, I'm here to discuss about the raft culture practice. Okay, aquaculture is the culturing of aquatic organism. In aquaculture, raft culture is also one of the important practices for culturing of the aquatic organisms. The raft culture is mainly used during the grown out period, that is the period between the transplantation of the organism and the harvest of the aquatic organism. The introduction of raft culture is the raft culture techniques are mainly used for culturing of many types of commercially important seaweeds laminaria, which is commonly called kelp, andaria, gelidium, and gracilaria, etc. Presently, some other sea organisms are also being cultivated by this raft culture method, scallops, oysters, mussels, and abalone also cultured by this method. In sometimes the culture polyculture method also practiced in raft culture system. Several species at once they are cultured together. For example, laminaria and scallops are cultured together, and laminaria and mussels also cultured in polyculture system. It is also a rapidly developing practices which are using the raft culture techniques. For the raft culture method, suitable site selection is a very important criteria. Um, for the selection of a site for the raft culture system, a suitable ecological condition is required. For example, first one is the substratum. The substratum that is a flat sea floor which are composed of mud or even silt sand is a best substratum for for the practice of raft culture, and even harder mud, sand, or a sludge covered substratum is also acceptable practice for the raft culture system. Next is the water depth. The suitable water depth for the culturing of raft, especially for laminaria, is sea forming, is mainly depends on the length of the laminaria, that is the kelp ropes are used. The length of the kelp ropes are used, and on the raft culture method employed. In general, the sea region which should be selected where the minimum water depth during a neap tide is 5 meters. So the minimum water depth must be 5 meter. And the tidal currents and wave action also one of the important criteria. The floating raft culture, it is the best suited for the sea areas where there are moderately but not excessively strong tidal currents. For example, 20 to 40 meters per minute is suitable for the raft culture system. Next one is the turbidity or the transparency. The turbidity are inversely related to the transparency. The higher the turbidity, the lower the water transparency. If the turbidity will fluctuate seasonally, the water transparency will also exhibit some seasonal variations. So the seawater region with high transparency and constant turbidity normally have a good level for the illumination throughout the year. Next is the water quality. For the culturing of in raft culture system, the quality of water also one of the important factors. And we should avoid the region with pollution like industrial areas and fishing areas, because due to the pollution it makes harmful to the culturing organisms. Next one is the nutrients. The nutrient availability also important factors for selecting a suitable site for the raft culture system. The nutrients, for example, nitrogen, phosphorus, are very essential for the culturing of these kelp-like organisms for their growth. Here we can see about the raft culturing method of laminaria and gracilaria. First, the raft culture method is ideal for the open sea condition. In a raft culture system, we require a square or rectangular raft which is fabricated with bamboo or casuarina poles. And for the buoyancy, the raft was provided with barrels, that is empty barrels of 200 liters capacity are tied at each corners. It will be painted with anti-corrosive paints or synthetic materials to avoid corrosion. Then the rafts are positioned at a suitable site in the sea using an anchor with 50 to 100 kg capacities made up of iron or granite or concretes. Then the seeded ropes can be suspended from 1 meter areas of the raft. In this figure, you can also see the raft culture method, like the bamboo poles or a casuarina poles are tied in a square shaped or rectangular shaped, and it is provided with buoys like barrels and some anchors. Then the orientation of raft. The raft must be positioned by the direction of the waves and tides, and it should be positioned parallel to the prevailing direction of the waves, and otherwise the raft should be positioned parallel to the direction of the prevailing tidal currents. What are the factors to be considered for a raft culture method? Or the water must be naturally calm area, and the temperature should be 15 to 30 degrees Celsius, and the water of the area must be completely changed by the water current, and it should be rich in phytoplankton. Then the construction of raft. A rigid framework for which the collectors or the growing ropes are hung, and second one is the buoys, that is buoyancy to keep the framework afloat. Then the collection of the seeds and seedlings for the raft culture method. The mussel seed, it is also called spats. They will settle at any convenient substratum after floating for a period of 17 to 20 days from spawning. If the spat collectors are set out very much earlier than the spawning period, a large number of barnacles and other harmful organisms will attach into the spat collectors. If On the other hand, if the collectors are set out too late, only a few spats will be collected. So, the correct period of time we should keep the spat collectors to collect a large number of spats. Then the spatfall season of the green mussels are generally irregular. The seeds are collected from the fish trap and bamboo pilings. Then the seed is carefully scraped off with a sharp instrument so that the byssal thread are not destroyed. If the byssal thread are destroyed, the animal is completely died. Then the seed is collected from the bamboo poles and grown to a marketable size on the same collecting materials without thinning. In the hanging culture method, the young mussels or the spats are collected with the collector rope and are later relayed or transplanted to the growing ropes. The mussel larvae are usually attracted to the filamentous objects and later moved to the more solid substances. To make the collector rope, a piece of coconut husk are inserted into the lay of a polyethylene or a polypropylene rope at 5 to 6 centimeter intervals. And these ropes are hung on the raft, which was spaced about zero point 0.5 meter apart, with a weight tied to the end of the rope to keep them vertical. Then the transplanting and seeding technique. For the collector ropes with the heavy spat settlements must be thinned out to prevent the overcrowding ones, and they have grown to the length of 2 to 3 centimeters. Then the mussel spats are transplanted to the growing rope where they are reared until they will be ready for the harvest. To thin out the collector ropes, the clusters of 10 to 20 young mussels are gently detached from the clump. A maximum of only 300 mussel spats should be bound per meter of the growing rope to allow the sufficient space for the growth. Then declustering the clumps of mussels and bind the clusters with strips of medical gauze or other suitable materials. And during transplantation, the mussel seed must be protected from the direct sunlight and the wind while they are out of the water. Then the length of the rope to be hung on the growing raft depends on the depth of the low tide. If the water current is fast and if there is a rich food supply, the ropes must be hung closer to each other. Then the farm maintenance. During the growth period, the farm must be closely watched and regularly inspected to check on the condition of the mussel and the stability and preservation of the raft. If any predators or fowlers and silt are attached, and they must be regularly removed so as they will add the weight of the raft. And the growing ropes are shaken to remove any accumulated silt and are lifted up for the inspection. The predators such as crabs and starfishes, if they may be present, means they will be driven off. Then the fouling organisms like barnacles and sponges, they may smoother the mussel and scrape off with a knife. Then harvesting, the transplanted young mussel about 50 to 60 long can be harvested after 4 to 6 months of their growth. Then the growing ropes are lifted off from the raft and the mussel clusters are carefully separated from the ropes. Then the care must be taken to during detaching process also, and the mussel will die and spoil in a few hours when the byssal thread is removed. So the care must be taken to prevent the byssal thread. Then the production, a raft measuring 6 meter wide and 8 meter long can yield 3 to 9 tons of mussels per crop, or it may yield 6 to 20 tons annually. On the other hand, a 100 square meter mussel farm using 50 bamboos for the traditional stack method can at most produce only 250 to 1500 kilograms of mussels. So, when compared to the raft, the traditional method can yield very meager amount of production. And thank you, one and all.